I think we're going to go ahead and get started with our second to last workshop of the day in this room. We have inclusive design principles that are essential, but implementing them throughout development can present certain challenges. In this workshop, we'll bridge theory and practice using adapted journey mapping techniques to help creators identify and overcome common hurdles. Here to lead us through, please welcome Caroline and Robert from the HELP Network, Diane Urban from the Gina Davis Institute, and Jade and Lindsay.
Hi, everybody. We are just going to briefly introduce ourselves, although that was great. So I'm from the Gina Davis Institute. This is now the third year that we've been so happy to be a part of Games for Change, and just really excited to be able to kind of show the progression of what we've been working on in gaming. I'm going to pass it over to Robert.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert. I'm a producer at the HELP Network, which is an audio and narrative production house.
Hello, I'm Caroline Calaway, and I am a consultant with the HELP Network, and come from EA and Riot and my history, and now very excited to be leaning into this impact in game space.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Lindsay Barnett. I am the CEO of Playground Productions, but more notably, we are bringing back the backyard sports franchise, backyard baseball, and games like that. So happy to talk about it more.
All right, thanks. And we have Jade, who is, unfortunately, as many of you who might be familiar with New York, is stuck in an Uber in traffic. So we are hoping that they'll be able to join us before we wrap up. So just a little brief look at what our agenda is going to be. Just talking a little bit about how we all came together, and then talk a little bit about our sort of breakout and the workshop framing portion. And we'll have our sessions. Caroline's going to talk about what journey mapping is. And then we'll all kind of come back and share what kind of our groups talked about and a little sort of deep dive into a couple different parts of sort of the journey map and how the GDI playbook can kind of help support you during those pain points. So on that note, so for those of you who are not familiar with the Gina Davis Institute, it's founded by two-time Academy Award-winning actor Gina Davis, and basically she started it when she was watching TV with her toddler daughter and was like, there's like a lot more boys on screen than there are girls, and just started kind of tracking it, just her own data. And because she had these relationships with TV and film studios, kind of went in there with the data and just presented it, and they're like, no, we fixed that. It's totally equal now. And so basically by having the data, she was able to like have these conversations and try to really move the needle. And while she started taking a look at gender representation, now the Institute looks at race, ethnicity, LGBTQIA, body size, even older characters, disabilities. So really taking a look at like how people show up on screen and the intersections of those identities. And so it's all based off of research, so you can have those conversations, but with the data to back it up. And I will move it over to the HELP Network.
The HELP Network is a production studio located in Los Angeles primarily. We work across audio and narrative, so largely at the intersection of those two things in voiceover, and we noticed that a lot of teams were sending out casting sides that were stereotypical or sometimes straight up offensive. So we realized we needed to connect these teams with people who could talk about culture with specificity, about how to get authenticity into their games, into their narratives, and beyond. It's now grown into something that we do with studios from pre-concepting all the way to marketing and things like that. So we're very excited to partner with the Gina Davis Institute to talk about this today.
And was I taking this one? Okay. So the reason why, and Robert did just really a nice job of kind of saying how we kind of came together, just being kind of like-minded about how you can sort of take the understanding of what the world looks like and use that to drive deeper engagement. Not just because we want to reflect the world, but because it actually makes a better game and experience and a more unique experience for everyone. And building lasting player connection is obviously our goal, right? And so I think as many of you who remembered backyard sports have that lasting player connection with that brand, we thought a really nice way to kind of kick this off would be to have Lindsay talk about their experience bringing the franchise back, but then what an inclusive sort of mindset organically means to building a franchise. So I will turn it over to Lindsay.
Thank you. So I'm, as I said, I'm Lindsay from the Backyard Sports brand. My Chicago accent comes out very strong when I say the name of the brand. But I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of Backyard and why it's so important to be bringing this back now. I cannot take credit for making this brand. I did not create this, but I did fall in love with baseball from it. So when I was 5 years old, I played this game. It was a computer game out of a cereal box. And I fell in love with this game and games from there, because if you look at the bench of characters, there's 15 boys, 15 girls. It's equal playing ability. The best player in the game doesn't speak English. Best pitcher is in a wheelchair. And I just saw myself in this game. And I wound up, after college, being a Chicago public school teacher for almost a decade. And I taught in a refugee school. And during COVID, I was trying to find great games for them to play when they were sitting at home and, stuck. And I was like, well, what happened to the Backyard Sports franchise? And it was nowhere to be found. So, teacher with, a lot of ambition and time on her hand, I hired a private investigator and tracked the rights down. I like to say, people who say for those who can't teach, are teachers. I was like, no, it's the opposite of that. If you're a teacher, you can do whatever. So wound up bringing these games back, and when I look at this picture, and one of the reasons why I wanted to put it on the screen, this is the most accurate representation of my classroom. And so very proud to bring these games back. What we're doing is not just accessible from a gender and diversity standpoint and playing ability, but it's also an accessible game from an actual playability point. So the reason why these games were so popular was it was the easiest access point for kids to learn about sports. And the Humongous Entertainment brand who created these games, shout out to Humongous Entertainment, please, it was an educational brand. And people were like, where does Backyard Sports fall into this? But it was actually they taught the rules of sports and inclusion and diversity and all of the things that we love about sports and all the lessons that they can have. That's what it taught. And so we're bringing this brand back. We're super pumped, and I'm excited to share more about this all a little bit later. A couple other things. But so point and click simplicity, we're gonna keep being able to have with all of our new games that same simplicity, but we'll be able to scale it up. So if you've never played the game before, you'll still have a very easy to learn point. But if you were somebody who grew up with the games, you'll be able to have like a super gamer mode and be able to play at your own level. The family-friendly approach is very important as games have shifted. This was obviously a CD-ROM game that had a contained audience and contained environment. We are very conscious not to be predatory in nature with how we're putting these games out. We just re-released 1997 on PlayStation and Switch and Steam and mobile, and a lot of people were like, why is it just a one-time purchase? Like, why can't you do freemium? Why can't you do all these things? And we were like, well, it's predatory to do that. We want it to be a one-time purchase, and then you'll never have to buy anything ever in the game again. And you won't have to win by buying it. You don't buy the win. You don't have to watch ads that are inappropriate or violent or anything of nature. It is truly a contained environment. So that's a little bit about what we're doing, and I'm really pumped to be here with all of these guys, and yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. So fun to hear about that. I don't know if anybody else feels super nostalgic right now, but wait, is this? Okay, yes. But the fun part of not just the fun part. That was a fun part too. But we're this is a workshop, so we're gonna break up into a few different groups. And we are going to explore different opportunities to integrate inclusive design practices throughout the game development lifecycle. And I don't know if anybody here is familiar with the concept of journey mapping. It's usually something that is applied to user experience. It's often talking about, or it's often used for kind of the end user experience to kind of identify the different parts of the user's journey and where they come to some pain points. And in this case, I thought it'd be kind of cool to apply that concept to the game development lifecycle and look at where we run into some pain points when it comes to how we're designing our games and how we can introduce inclusive development practices in. So to do this, to go over the pain points ourselves, we're gonna break into 3 different groups. So over here, we're actually going to push those 2 tables together. You don't have to do it right now. I'll do it in a minute. And you all will be focusing on concept and ideation. You will be with the lovely Diane. This middle section is going to be with Robert, focusing on narrative design in pre-production. And you'll be exploring the pain points you see up here. And then I will be over there with those 2 tables looking into character design and a pain point that can come up there. So here's your scenario that you're going to work with. It's very, very broad, but just to give y'all a little bit of framework to work with, it's we're going to be developing a fantasy action RPG. We're aiming to reach the kind of broad, passionate audience that are drawn to a game like Baldur's Gate 3 or the upcoming Dragon Age Veilguard. So keep that in your mind as we're going through this exercise. And we are going to take some really awesome resources from the GDI playbook and learn how to actually apply those in a real or a mock game development scenario. So let's push these 2 tables together, those 2 tables and these 2 tables, and we'll be handing out some worksheets and get started. Oh.
Hello. Thank you for all of these amazing conversations. I'm going to keep talking, and I will keep on vamping, and I will keep on going. Thank you so much for participating in our workshop today. We're going to take a little bit of time here to share back some of the things that were talked about in our individual groups so that everyone can hear some of the things that were discussed across all of the topics. And I will let Caroline go first and talk about some of the things that were talked about in the character group.
We'll go a little out of order here. Hopefully that's okay for everybody. But yeah, this was really, really awesome. First of all, I definitely wish we had at least twice as much time. But in the character design group, we paired up and designed characters that utilized the 5 Ps. Which is a part of the GDI playbook that focuses on breaking out of potentially harmful stereotypes So each of the 5 P's is prominence, power, personality, proficiency, and profession. And we looked at how in a fantasy action RPG, when we're designing characters for them, how we can question our assumptions about what a mage should be or an orc should be, and just kind of putting a different spin on those characters. And lots of really, really awesome character ideas came up, and I think kind of the general theme was that we all, recognize that certain stereotypes exist, and when we say a mage, the same image likely pops up in all of our heads, and that we're really, conditioned to just accept that and not question it, but just utilizing, a few prompts, just a few questions to think a little bit differently about how that character might show up in a game really makes a huge difference. And a character that would traditionally, or in a stereotype, be potentially harmful can be really helpful and lovely. And so we just really encourage everybody to take that back to your game studios and try it out. I also want to acknowledge that we brought up the concept of fantasy races in our group, and someone rightfully called out that actually kind of plays into the stereotypes just by saying that. So I wanted to just acknowledge that, and there's no end to how, not no end, but it's always great to question even our own assumptions when we think that we are being inclusive. So that's my takeaway.
I'll go. Hello. In the narrative group, we talked about some common fantasy tropes in terms of narrative, and talked about a few ways that we can set up counter narratives to those. One that was brought up was, of course, damseling of women in games or in stories. And one of the things that was brought up is how is that damsel changed by that damsel being not a woman, being a man, being another gender? How is it changed by them being black? How is it changed by them being disabled in some ways? Another topic that came up was women, both young and old in games, being often portrayed in a very stereotypical way, where older women who are wise tend to not have children. Is there a way that we can include some of these same women, but sort of counter-narrative that idea that to be a wise woman, you must be childless, or that only childless women are wise? Another common thing that was discussed was manifest destiny, this idea of going out into the world and claiming it as your own, trusting in leaders. Oftentimes in fantasy, a leader is portrayed as the ultimate trustworthy person, a moral force of good. Is there perhaps a narrative we can set up where such a trope in narrative is completely subverted, where that we believe that at the beginning because we play into that trope, and by the end we've completely countered it. So those were a few things we covered.
Amazing. And so a little bit going towards the very beginning, backwards. So we were talking about concept and ideation, but it's also related because we had an exercise called social identity mapping, where you sort of kind of think through how you identify according to all these different dimensions that could be part of your identity. But then what we were talking about too is, and somebody in our group rightfully brought up that maybe you don't consider yourself exactly one thing, or maybe you don't identify as at all in that identity. But the exercise itself, really was about when you bring this step to the beginning, and then hopefully revisit it throughout different stages of development, you kind of can bring in a sort of understanding of what perspective you're bringing to your creative development. So are you seeing the world through your eyes as, for example, like a member of a particular generation, and so who's telling the story? And then do you realize, oh wait, so there's no one part of the story who is from the older generation. And then one of our group members said, maybe that through that exercise identifying that, you can think about bringing that group into sort of conversations throughout the game. We had a big conversation about how doing this at an early stage is much more beneficial than going through the entire game and then being like, hey, let's check with the different identity groups, because when you get that feedback, then much can be much harder to change. So we were kind of talking about how this could be an exercise to sort of identify maybe where your strengths are, where you might have places where you need support when you're thinking about the different characters that might be a part of this game. But then, that's actually a very nice segue to what we were going to talk about in the post-production group, as far as, how you can, if you don't have that particular experience, how you can, sort of bring a broader perspective to the players or the broader player universe that you want to engage.
Just a quick note on that. One of the key takeaways that we want everyone to walk away with is that, of course, there's always going to be areas that are outside of your team's area of expertise. There are going to be areas that will be a pain point, and that there are many people out there that can help you through those through those pain points. Whether it's resources like the Gina Davis Institute, or perhaps a privately contracted consultant directly onto your team, whether that's hiring diverse teams in the first place, which everyone should be doing anyways. And that's sort of one of the biggest ways to connect with your player base is by making authentic characters that connect to them. A quick example is that the Valorant team was developing an Indian character, and one of the pieces of feedback they got was about the specific type of pencil that is used in schools in India. And when they were teasing the character, they included a image with that specific kind of pencil, and all of the Indian players of Valorant lost their minds because they all knew what was coming in 2 weeks when the game would be updated. And everyone else saw that excitement and went, oh my gosh, I can't wait for a character from my country, from my culture to be included in this game. And that's one way that we can make a really strong connection with players, as well as make an impact in our broader society.
And so on the sort of recapping of what we were hoping that you all can sort of walk away with today is, that inclusive design starts early, and that, it is an ongoing thing. We can always be learning. And even with all the experts, we are all just still learning. And then, and I think I like somebody saying before, it's okay to make mistakes. You shouldn't avoid trying to do better by worrying that you'll be making a mistake. So just trying to use the resources that you can find and seek those out and be curious. And that's hopefully a lot of the, these exercises, we're trying to do that, not be a checklist, but to be like some way that you can kind of think about, maybe how your own creative thinking works. As I think that example was so great, representation impacts engagement. I mean, this makes for more interesting and different, new, not the same old hero's journey all the time. I love this idea of like a different damsel. And then, please, hopefully the GDI Playbook can be your ally. It's a free resource that we'll hope you'll use. And, hopefully you'll keep these conversations going with your team. You all had such sort of great sort of small group conversations. I think it could be hopefully a helpful way to sort of understand, the perspectives of your team members. And one of the other things too that, we did talk about in that other group is, when you're building that diverse team, hopefully, or including people who, if you don't have a large team, is making sure that it's a safe space that people can feel comfortable speaking up and saying, actually, I find, that that's a little bit different from my experience. And so really it's kind of building that trusted space. And if it's a part of your design from the very beginning, it will be much more understood that that's the expectation. So we have down at the bottom, we'd love for you to get connected with us. We have all of our deets, and we also have a little survey just for this if you want to share any insights with us, or if you'd like to kind of participate more. But yeah, please get in touch. Thanks so much for your awesome participation. Any final words, crew?
Feel free to take the worksheets with you if they're helpful, or even just as a reminder once you get back to, if you're on a game team, that, hey, this, again, free resource, it's there for you, and there's so much good stuff in there. It's crazy. So, yeah, use it.
Come up and say hi.